This is a webinar on learning menus, desserts, and summative assessments. My name is Kelly Stair. I'm the author of VoiceThread for Digital Education and QR Revolution. My work and my webinars can be found at www.angrybuddypublishing.com, and my email addresses are below. So what's a learning menu? Just in case you have missed the earlier webinars, a learning menu is a differentiation strategy that helps students choose between different learning activities. The menu offers some students choice in what activities they would like to perform in order to complete learning tasks and goals. Different points may be awarded for different types or levels of tasks, and then students are responsible for earning a certain amount of points or earning points in different sections. Learning menus are divided into sections when you make a whole unit menu. We have beverages, appetizers, soups and salads, entrees, and desserts. Each of those sections is a different type of activity. So the beverages were vocabulary strategies, soups and salads and appetizers were supplementary texts and background activities. And so each of those sections corresponds to a different type of learning. Students will then choose options from each section to complete. And the options are the tasks or activities that the students are going to do in order to earn that set of points. For more webinars in this series, you can go to angrybuddypublishing.com. The events page will show upcoming webinars, and the recent blogs or online workshops will show all of the archived webinars. So in our unit menu, we are looking at desserts, which are summative assessments. As you can see, the earlier sections were beverages, which were vocabulary, appetizers, which is background information, soups and salads, which is supplementary texts and the tasks that go with them, entrees, which is using anchor texts and having tasks that go with those, and then finally dessert, which is our summative assessment. When you think of summative assessments, you have to realize that this is what you use to determine what students have learned over the course of a unit. It's really important to know that it's not what you think you've taught, but you're determining what students have actually learned, and that's a big difference. If you use essential questions, which this unit guide does, you want to make sure that the essential questions are an integral part of your summative assessments. You're assessing students in their performance or knowledge of the learning goals and objectives for that unit. You can also differentiate your summative assessments by the products, the tools, and the processes that students use in order to show you what they've learned. And rubrics are a key component of summative assessments. Here's some types of summative assessments that students can do at the end of a unit to demonstrate their learning. These summative assessments can be written, oral, or performance products. Tests, such as multiple choice or essay or short question tests, in any format that you use. Projects. I have lots of projects that I use as summative assessments, and I have a lot of technology tools that I use in order for students to do those projects. And projects can really be a huge part of summative assessments and letting students differentiate those ideas and show you what they've really learned. In addition to projects, presentations of what students have learned, whether it's a stand up and defend your learning type situation, or whether it's an organized presentation where students are using visual aids such as PowerPoint or other tools. Demonstrations of learning, such as completing a lab activity or demonstrating that activity to another group of students. Any type of service learning or teaching experience that you can get for students in order to have them show what they've learned is great. Service learning projects are a really valuable tool for getting students involved not only in the learning process, but in the demonstration of their learning. And then anytime you can get someone to the point where they feel comfortable teaching something really shows that they've learned what they are supposed to have learned. Portfolios are another type of summative assessment, as well as any kind of evaluation or reflection piece, whether it's written or oral or some kind of visual reflection. Here's some resources for different types of summative assessments. So I went through a big list of all these different types of summative assessments. Now I'd like to break some down and talk to you about having some resources to either find and create summative assessments or to evaluate them later. So if you're looking for project ideas, John Wheeler's Authentic Assessment Toolbox, his website has some great ideas, and it is a fantastic organization of just dozens and dozens of project ideas. They're nicely organized. Each one is a clickable link, and so if you're just looking for, I'm looking for some projects that I can put into my learning menu to see how students are doing, that is a fantastic tool to use. Another tool for project ideas is edtechteacher.org, and they have a Teaching with Technology Innovative Projects site, and it also has a list of different types of projects. Instead of just being a clickable list, this one actually has the descriptions in that site, and so if you're looking to just kind of extend your toolbox of different project ideas, that's a nice site to use also. Another type of summative assessment is the essay or multimedia essay, and if you are doing that, that would be your written assessment. If you want to do those, or if you want some examples of those to show to students, which can sometimes be the difficult part when you want to find good models, there's a great set of student examples at this Wikispaces site of student multimedia essays showing using visuals, using videos, using graphics, and putting them together into an essay format. So it's not necessarily a written essay, but it's using those different visual tools and different multimedia pieces in order to create an essay. Here's some more resources. For service learning projects, I personally think my students get the most out of service learning projects. And for my freshmen, my co-teacher and I do a service learning project based off the book Sold by Patricia McCormick, and it is all about a girl who is sold into prostitution from Nepal. And so it talks about poverty, and it talks about human trafficking, and it is an excellent novel. And then we do a service learning project on it where students get to do research on human trafficking, they get to find different resources, and then we have a service learning dinner where we invite their parents and other people in the community in, and the students educate the adults or the other guests on what they can do to stop human trafficking. It is a really powerful learning strategy, and to be able to do something like that where students actually get to make a difference in their communities and help teach other people is great. I mean, they learn so much from it. And we can get all of those writing and reading and organizing skills in there through this project. Another great resource, or I'm sorry, two great resources for looking at service learning projects, whether you're completely new to projects, to service learning projects, or you've done a couple but you want more ideas for different ones that you can do. Both of these links are fantastic. Servicelearning.org has hundreds of ideas for service learning projects that have already been performed by students, and they're organized by grade level and by topic and by subject. And so it's a great resource if you're just like, I'm interested in doing this, but I've never done one. I'd like to see lots of examples. And then iSeek.org has service learning examples and kind of a structure for if you're going to create a project, here's how you go about doing that. A final detailed summative assessment that we're going to get into is portfolios. Portfolios can be used for process. They can also be used for products. And for product portfolios where students are gathering and organizing and curating their own work and then making reflections based on those, they work great as summative assessments. Now, if you're going to use portfolios, obviously there's lots of research on portfolios, and this isn't a webinar on portfolios. But if you already know about portfolios, there are lots of great things that you can do with those as summative assessments. I pulled up two resources if you're interested in using portfolios as this kind of learning menu summative assessment. One is from the ASCD, which is a fantastic group. They have the types of portfolios. And then another one is from the assessment toolbox, the Authentic Assessment Toolbox, and that's all about portfolios as well. And so those are some resources that you can use if you're interested in those specific types of summative assessments. So let's really quickly talk about what's in an assessment. What are the key points that you need to know to write great assessments? First off, the purpose of summative assessments is to determine what students have learned, both the content of what they've learned and the skills that they have learned. It's really important that you don't focus on what you're teaching, that you focus on what students have learned. And unfortunately, sometimes those are different. Students can learn a lot of things, even if you didn't teach them, especially if you use tasks that involve inquiry or that involve student research. And that's a great thing, that students go out and explore and get involved and make personal connections to topics and themes that you're working with. That's excellent. Another thing that you need to keep in mind is that sometimes students don't learn what you think you've taught. And that is both a tool for you to use in looking at how you taught it and for students to use in how they are learning. So if you have a bunch of students that you think they should have learned X, but what they really learned was Y, and that has nothing to do with what you were teaching or they missed a point, that means that whatever strategy you're using to teach that particular concept or skill isn't working. And so you just use that to assess your own teaching. Also in a summative assessment, you need to give format alternatives. If you want to know what students have learned, and the only way you ask them to show it is by using something that they're not good at. For example, if you have students that are not good writers, but your summative assessment is an essay, you are not judging what they've learned, you're judging what they can write. And that's a big deal. If you have students that can't write and you ask them to write, yes, of course you want to keep building their skills, but you have to take into account the fact that showing what you've learned about a theme shouldn't involve only the ability to write. And so giving format alternatives to students, especially in this menu format, really lets them show what they've learned. And that's the goal of summative assessment, to say, what have you learned from this unit? The focus of summative assessment needs to be the goals and objectives that you set out at the beginning of the unit, and the essential questions wrapped into that. Finally, you need to make sure that whatever rubric you use as your summative assessment, or whatever rubrics for the summative assessments, that you give them before the assessment is due, so that the students can use those rubrics as a guide to produce high-quality work. If you just give the details or the directions, but you don't give students the guide for how to work it, you're going to end up with a big variety of difference in what students give you back. And if you really want to see what students have learned, you want to make sure that they know how you want to see it. Okay? If you are very laid back and you say, show me in any format that you want, and you're okay with grading crazy formats, that's fine. But if you're very detail-oriented and you say, you know what, I really want to see this, this, and this, then you've got to tell students, I want to see this, this, and this. Finally, I pulled up another resource, and it's for, it's kind of an educator guide from the college perspective, so teachers that are in college for and learning about summative assessments, it's kind of a guide for them. And so it's a really nice guide for creating summative assessments and thinking those things through. One final set of resources is for rubrics, and I found this great comprehensive list of online rubric resources. It's clickable, really easy to use. It's at edtechteacher.org, and this is the link, and it is absolutely fantastic as far as having a big list of different types of rubric resources that you can find online. So let's take this idea of summative assessments and all of the different types of assessments and put this into our learning menus unit. So if your idea is to offer students choices for how they want to show their summative assessment, so how they want to show their learning, then you need to offer options. You can't offer 20 options with a summative assessment, though, because you won't be able to grade them all. It'll be just too frustrating. It'll be too diverse. But you should offer 2 or 3 options with the opportunity for students to be creative within those. And like I said earlier, how creative you want students to get really depends on you as a teacher. How flexible are you in looking at things and saying, oh, this, and this is what I wanted. I got it. The format's cool and creative, but doesn't really make sense to me, and that's okay. If you're comfortable with that, then you can let students be as crazy and creative as you want. If you want a little bit more structure, then you need to tell them, look, I'm looking for this, and this. This is the structure I'd like to see. Within those 2 or 3 options, you should differentiate by learning style. So your mastery students might want you to tell them exactly what you're looking for with any type of summative assessment. Give me a set of questions to answer and I'll answer them. So you might want to differentiate one of your options so that your mastery students have a step-by-step list of what they're supposed to do. You might also have, for your more interpersonal students, a collaborative option so that they can work with a partner or work with a small group and really use that collaborative learning style to work for them. You might also differentiate by the technology tools that you use. If students are really familiar with the technology tool, it'll make it easier for them to process information through it. If students, on the other hand, are less familiar with the technology tool and how to use that tool, they also have to learn the tool usage before they can use it. And so you might want to offer different technology tools or different options for technology tools that students can use as one way to differentiate those options. Another thing that you can differentiate by is the media that students create. Some students love to write. Let them write. Some students like to create visuals because they're more visual learners. So let them create a multimedia essay as opposed to a regular essay. We might also have them creating videos or screencasts or infographics. So think about the different ways in which they can use media and present that information to you. Finally, you might differentiate by the literacy skills that students are using in order to create their piece. Like I said earlier, some students love to write, let them write. Some students are more visual, let them be visual. The discussion aspect, some students like to discuss and collaborate and get that synergy going, and some students are like, I want to work on my own. So you've got your writing skills, your reading skills, your discussion skills, and those are the 3 big literacy skills. So you might differentiate your summative assessments by those skills as well. With your summative assessments and your learning menus, you're also going to want to provide rubrics and guides or models for each one. So if you have 3 options for students to do as their summative assessment, then you need to provide rubrics for all 3 and guides or models for all 3. You also want to be specific about what you're looking to assess, the content and the skills. If you are using like different technology tools, you might have a piece for that. You might have a piece for presentation, but that shouldn't be what the main assessment is on. Your assessment needs to be on the content and the skills that students were supposed to learn in that unit. You might also, and I strongly encourage this, include a reflection piece for students to offer their feedback. It's really important both to evaluate your own teaching and to let students process all the things that they've learned, to include a piece where students can say, these are the things that I learned in this unit. Whether you have that reflection piece as a discussion or as a video journal or as a regular journal, it doesn't matter what the format is, as long as students get a chance to reflect before they move on to the next section. And it really helps integrate and process the information that they've learned. Finally, you want to make sure that you integrate literacy skills into your project. So if the project, and that's your summative assessment, if that summative assessment is involving video, you want to make sure that there are good literacy skills in there, that they are crafting a good argument, or that they are using great transitions or introductions or conclusions. And so you really want to integrate literacy skills into that summative assessment. Up next, we are going to do a demonstration unit. And this will be a unit from a freshman literature class. The anchor text for the unit is A Long Way Gone by Ishmael Bea, about child soldiers in Sierra Leone. The webinar will start with an overview of the unit creation process, so how to put together a unit using learning menus, including the gathering and organizing of resources. It will also include a beverage list, appetizer, soup and salad, entree, and dessert list options. So for each of those categories, there will be different options for activities that students can do in order to meet the learning goals of that particular category. Technology tools and literacy strategies for each of the sections will also be talked about, as well as a cool menu presentation. And interspersed will be some tips and strategies for creating your own unit learning menu. My name is Kelly Stair. I'm a writer and teacher consultant with AngryBunnyPublishing.com. If you like this presentation, you'll love my ebook, VoiceThread for Digital Education, available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and other ebook retailers. You can also look for QR Revolution coming November 25th, which is available for pre-order for $2.99 at Smashwords. Be sure to join me every Tuesday and Thursday for more great teaching digital literacy strategies.